There has been a setback in the revolution for sound money in the state of North Dakota. I'll explain what happened in this video as we explore. It was bound to happen. We can't have victory after victory. In fact, we know that the fight is going to be hard, especially after what we found out what happened in Kentucky, as I've reported on this channel. And there's been other setbacks as well, like in New Jersey. But there's been some surprises along the way, and victories will be had, especially in those two cases. But in North Dakota, there is a setback. And what do I mean by revolution for sound money? Well, we're talking about different forms of money here. Gold and silver indeed are sound money. Most of us understand that. This is unsound money. This is bad money. But it is what we use every single day. We have to convert this to this in order to pay our bills. But in order to save, it's a good idea to have some of these on hand, but also to have some of this on hand. Sound money. Money that is sound and not affected by politics, by monetary policy. It exists for what it is and has been for thousands of years. The good folks at Summit Metals, they understand that. Check them out. They sell gold and silver at some of the lowest prices around. So check out summitmetals.com. Now, as we look at what's happening in North Dakota, the great scheme or the great overall picture we're looking at here is about preserving wealth. And I think some of these states, especially after inflation rocketed up back in 2022, 2023 to about 9%, and based off the official numbers, and they were losing. States can't print money. And that is what has caused inflation, is the printing of money or the digitization of it. Digitizing money and creating it out of thin air creates this inflation. And that is because of government spending. Now, here's a piece here from the North Dakota Monitor that tells us exactly what happened with this bill to mandate state investment in gold and silver has failed in the Senate in the State House of North Dakota. Senator Jerry Klein, Republican from Fessenden, Assistant Majority Leader, speaks on the Senate floor during an organizational session and talks about what happened here. The Senate voted down a bill that would have required the state treasurer to invest 1% of the state treasury in gold and silver bullion. House Bill 1183, sponsored by Representative Daniel Johnston, failed on a 34-13 vote Monday. So pretty overwhelming vote to knock it down. Senator Jerry Klein, a Republican Fessenden, said while the bill had good intentions, the state treasurer is just handling the checkbook. He said that the state's general fund and other funds controlled by the state treasurer are on the wrong funds to be used for investing. I guess that kind of does make sense, but in a way, I think that it's not investing, and you need to think about it as a case where as a savings vehicle rather than as an investment. And so he said that the state's general fund and other funds controlled by the treasurer are not really applicable to this. But if you buy gold and silver, you buy it as an investment, and you will hold in hopes of increasing in value, Klein said. You don't convert that monthly so you can make your house payment, your car payment, or everyday expenses. You need some liquidity. And that's really true. And that's why I talked about the difference between having gold and silver on your person, you hold it, as opposed to having these. Obviously, the bad money is much more liquid, much more easily accessible. However, it's not an investment either. In fact, it's a losing proposition by, at the very least, according to the Federal Reserve's target, 2% every year you lose on holding dollars. Gold and silver have proven themselves, even silver, especially gold though, over the long course of time to at least preserve wealth. In fact, even outperform the S&P 500 according to gold. Now, Klein added that the State Investments Board and Department of Trust Lands can already make investments into precious metals if they choose. But the thing is he's thinking about it like an investment. Gold and silver should not be seen as an investment in a financial sense. Now, investing in the future of preserving your wealth Yes, in a general sense, you can do that, and that's exactly what gold and silver do. There's no question about that. They can act to invest in the future of sound money and wealth preservation. But as a financial, in terms of making money off of gold and silver, that's not what they're there for. They're not there to make you money. They're there to preserve the money you already have, which is indeed gold and silver, according to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. Why would you use money to invest in money unless you're leveraging it in some way? The Bank of North Dakota would also need about $2 million to renovate its vault to accommodate the metals, which could weigh in the tons, Klein said. He added the housing of precious metals would create new ongoing costs for managing the state's supply. Senator Dale Patton of Watford City said the gold and silver investments are not part of the state's comprehensive investment plan and voted against the measure. During the public hearing for the bill, Johnson told lawmakers that other nations are moving away from the U.S. dollar and as a foundational currency and wanted the state to control something that would be independent of inflationary pressures. Exactly right. And so that is something that is very profound. He pointed out that the U.S. dollar loses 2 to 3% of its value every year, while gold has appreciated greatly in recent decades. And that's just it. It is about wealth preservation, not investment. And I think these other lawmakers don't understand that fundamental principle of gold and silver. And so with that being said, they are obviously not going to want to move into investments, and rightfully so. But if you look at it as something beyond just an investment, as wealth preservation devices, gold and silver are, then it should change the calculus for how they vote. Other states understand this and are making moves in that direction. And so this is a lesson here, folks, that even for you, the viewer, I can't tell you how many people have come to my channel and say, silver was a terrible investment, or I'm thinking about investing in gold and silver. And even though they can be leveraged as investments in the short term, it's a risky investment, by the way. In both cases, more so with silver than gold, they should be seen as long-term assets of wealth preservation. And in a sense, more like an insurance policy. Do you invest in your insurance policy? Maybe in a general sense, it is a good idea to have money as an insurance policy to protect yourself, but we don't see that as an investment. We see it as a insurance policy or savings. When you put money into savings, is that an investment? I guess if you earn a particular interest rate that can keep up with inflation, then you see that as really a savings vehicle with a high yield. And it's a shame to say that the high yields mostly do not keep up with inflation. I know a money market account, for instance, most of those do not keep up with inflation unless you get a promotional rate. And that only lasts for a certain amount of time. So those are the things to consider. And the North Dakota politicians in the Senate, they fundamentally don't understand that. Of course, they use the situation of the cost to retrofit storage for these metals. And I can understand that. That's a big deal. I think that is a worthy investment in order to preserve the wealth from an ever-declining dollar. North Dakota as a state is getting screwed because of what the Federal Reserve is doing. And I would think that they would want to move in a direction to underpin and undermine the Federal Reserve System, which does nothing but punish not only citizens, but also whole states. Yes, indeed. We're at that mercy. And so I think at the very least, this should be reconsidered and thought about. And if they can find some way to retrofit that building and make that investment in order to preserve wealth over the long course of time, I think they're going to do themselves a good favor. So there you have it. Now let me know what your thoughts are about this situation. And again, I can relate to the lack of understanding of measures of what the Federal Reserve or what the Federal Reserve is doing and what precious metals have done, both completely different and as far as how they perform. But I would hope that the good folks at North Dakota would reconsider this and not only put money into gold and silver for themselves, but also make it legal tender so that it can flourish there within the state of North Dakota. So there you have it. Now, what I like to do on this channel is I like to give you the latest news and analysis in the world of precious metals. I do post multiple videos a day. So I hope you would consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy what I do here. And with that being said, I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.